Reece Walsh issues statement after picture of him kissing Nathan Cleary's girlfriend. Before we dive into this absolutely wild damage control attempt, quick favour. If you're loving the content on Unpopular Aussie Opinions, smash that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers watch without subscribing. It costs nothing, but means the world to us. Did you hit it? Legend. Thanks so much. Now back to the main event. Reece Walsh just broke his silence after those explosive photos of him kissing Mary Fowler, Nathan Cleary's girlfriend, went viral, and what he said in his statement has done absolutely nothing to calm the storm. Picture this. The entire Australian sporting community is in meltdown. Fans are calling for Walsh's head. His teammates are reportedly furious, and after days of deafening silence, Walsh finally releases a statement that's supposed to explain everything and make things right. Except it doesn't. Not even close. The statement has been ripped apart by fans, criticised by media personalities, and has somehow managed to make this scandal even messier than it already was. Social media went from angry to absolutely nuclear after Walsh's words went public, with people dissecting every sentence, calling out what they see as lies and excuses, and demanding real accountability. Stick around, because what we are about to break down isn't just a public relations disaster. This is a masterclass in how not to handle a scandal, and trust me, by the end of this, you'll understand why Reece Walsh might have just destroyed his reputation beyond repair. Now, before we get into the statement itself, let's recap how we got here, because the context is crucial. Photos emerged showing Reece Walsh, the Brisbane Broncos and Australian fullback, kissing Mary Fowler, who at the time was in a relationship with Nathan Cleary, Walsh's teammate in the Australian squad and arguably the most respected player in rugby league. This wasn't just any indiscretion. This was a fundamental betrayal of the brotherhood that's supposed to exist between teammates, a violation of the unwritten code that says you absolutely do not mess with your mate's girlfriend, let alone your captain's partner. The photos sent shockwaves through Australian sport, with fans struggling to comprehend how Walsh could be so reckless and disrespectful. For several days after the photos went public, Walsh remained completely silent. No Instagram post, no Twitter statement, no comment to the media, nothing. And that silence only made things worse. People filled the void with speculation, conspiracy theories, and increasingly angry demands that Walsh address what he'd done. His social media accounts were flooded with comments calling him every name under the sun. Former players were appearing on radio and television shows condemning his actions. The longer he stayed silent, the guiltier he looked, and the angrier people became. So when his management finally announced that Walsh would be releasing a statement, everyone was watching, waiting to see if he'd take responsibility, apologize sincerely, and show some remorse for what he'd done. The statement, when it finally dropped, was an absolute disaster from the first sentence. Walsh started by saying that he wanted to address the recent speculation and set the record straight, as if what we all saw in those photos was somehow up for interpretation or debate. He acknowledged that the photos existed and that they showed him in a moment that he deeply regrets, which sounds good until you realize he's framing this as just a moment, a single mistake, rather than a deliberate choice to betray a teammate. The language throughout the statement was carefully crafted to minimize his responsibility, to make it sound like this was something that just happened to him rather than something he actively chose to do. And people picked up on that immediately. Walsh then went on to say that the situation was more complicated than it appears, which is public relations speak for "I'm about to make excuses." He claimed that he and Mary had developed a friendship over time, that they'd been supporting each other through the challenges of their respective careers, and that feelings had developed that neither of them expected or intended. This is where the statement really went off the rails, because Walsh is essentially asking us to believe that he accidentally caught feelings for his captain's girlfriend and accidentally ended up kissing her. As if attraction and intimacy are things that just randomly happen without any agency or choice involved. The condescension in assuming people would buy this explanation was staggering, and social media absolutely tore him apart for it. The next part of Walsh's statement addressed Nathan Cleary directly, and this is where you could really see the inadequacy of his apology. He said that he has immense respect for Nathan as a player and as a person, and that he never intended to hurt him or damage their professional relationship. Never intended to hurt him? Mate, you kissed his girlfriend. What exactly did you think was going to happen? Did you think Nathan would just be cool with it? The disconnect between Walsh's words and reality was so massive that people couldn't tell if he was genuinely this clueless or if his PR team had written the worst apology in sporting history. Either way, the damage was done, and if Walsh thought this statement would earn him sympathy or forgiveness from Cleary, he was dead wrong. Walsh also took time in his statement to address Mary Fowler's role in all this, and the way he did it raised even more questions. He said that Mary is an incredible person who found herself in a difficult situation, essentially painting her as a victim of circumstances rather than an active participant in the betrayal. This transparent attempt to protect Mary while taking the heat himself might have seemed noble, but it actually came across as patronizing and dishonest. Mary Fowler is a grown woman and a professional athlete who made her own choices. Treating her like she was somehow swept up in events beyond her control isn't chivalrous, it's insulting to everyone's intelligence. And fans absolutely called out Walsh for this obvious deflection tactic. Toward the end of the statement, Walsh addressed his responsibility to his teammates and the Australian Rugby League team. He acknowledged that his actions have created an uncomfortable situation within the squad, and that he understands if his teammates are disappointed in him. Disappointed? That's the word he chose? His teammates aren't disappointed like a parent whose kid brought home a bad report card. They're furious that he violated one of the most fundamental codes of team sports. They're questioning whether they can trust him. They're wondering how they're supposed to work alongside someone who's shown such a spectacular lack of judgment and respect. But Walsh's statement treated this massive betrayal like a minor inconvenience that everyone should just get over for the good of the team. The statement concluded with Walsh saying that he would be taking time away from social media to focus on his mental health and to work on being a better person moving forward. And this is where a lot of people really lost patience with him. Using mental health as a shield after being caught doing something terrible has become a predictable pattern in celebrity scandals. And while mental health is a serious issue that deserves respect and understanding, Walsh's timing made it feel like a manipulation rather than a genuine concern. He didn't mention mental health struggles before the scandal broke. He didn't talk about it while he was kissing his captain's girlfriend. But now that he's facing consequences and public backlash, suddenly it's time to focus on mental health and step away from criticism? The cynicism of it was obvious to everyone watching. The reaction to Walsh's statement was swift, brutal, and almost universally negative. Within minutes of it being posted, social media was flooded with responses tearing apart every aspect of what he'd said. Former players appeared on sports shows calling the statement weak and inadequate. One retired NRL star said it was the most cowardly non-apology he'd ever seen from a professional athlete. Fans created memes mocking Walsh's claim that the situation was complicated, with people sarcastically suggesting that not kissing your teammate's girlfriend is actually incredibly simple and straightforward. The hashtags criticizing Walsh were trending for hours, and the overwhelming consensus was that he'd somehow made an already terrible situation even worse by releasing such a tone-deaf statement. What made the backlash even more intense was the comparison people drew between Walsh's statement and how other athletes have handled similar scandals. When players have genuinely taken responsibility for their mistakes, acknowledged the hurt they've caused without making excuses, and committed to real consequences and changes, the public has generally been more forgiving. But Walsh's statement read like it was written by a committee of lawyers and PR professionals who were more concerned with limiting liability than expressing genuine remorse. There was no real accountability, no acknowledgement of the severity of what he'd done, and no meaningful commitment to facing consequences beyond taking a social media break, which isn't exactly a harsh punishment. Nathan Cleary's response to Walsh's statement has been notable in its absence. Cleary has remained completely silent publicly, which probably speaks volumes about how inadequate he found Walsh's apology. When the person you've wronged doesn't even dignify your statement with a response, that tells you everything you need to know about whether your apology landed. Sources close to Cleary have suggested that he's focused on his own healing and doesn't feel any obligation to make Walsh feel better about what he's done. And honestly, good on him. Cleary doesn't owe Walsh forgiveness or understanding. Walsh is the one who created this mess, and Cleary is under no obligation to help him clean it up. The Brisbane Broncos find themselves in an incredibly difficult position following Walsh's statement. Their star fullback has just admitted to behaviour that's damaged his reputation, created tension within the Australian team, and disappointed countless fans. Do they stand by him and weather the public relations storm? Do they distance themselves from his actions while keeping him on the roster? Or do they consider more serious consequences? The club's response, or lack thereof, will say a lot about their values and their tolerance for off-field behaviour that reflects poorly on the organisation. So far, they've remained publicly silent, probably hoping this blows over, but that seems increasingly unlikely given how badly Walsh's statement has been received. The Australian Rugby League team is facing its own crisis following Walsh's statement. How do you maintain team unity and chemistry when one player has betrayed the captain in such a public and humiliating way? How does the coaching staff manage the inevitable tension in the dressing room? And perhaps most importantly, How do Cleary and Walsh coexist on the same team moving forward? Walsh's statement hasn't resolved any of these issues. If anything, it's made them worse by demonstrating that he doesn't fully grasp the magnitude of what he's done. The next time Australia plays, all eyes will be on the dynamic between these two players, and you can bet opposing teams will be looking to exploit any weakness or dysfunction that results from this scandal. Looking at the bigger picture, Walsh's statement represents a broader problem with how public figures handle accountability in the social media age. There's a formula that's emerged for scandal management. Issue a vague statement that acknowledges the incident without really taking responsibility, mention mental health or personal growth, promise to do better, and then disappear from public view until people move on to the next scandal. But this approach doesn't actually address the harm that's been caused. It doesn't demonstrate genuine remorse or commitment to change. It's just damage control designed to minimize immediate consequences while hoping time will heal the reputational wounds. And increasingly, the public is getting wise to this formula and rejecting these carefully crafted non-apologies. So here we are, processing Reece Walsh's spectacularly inadequate statement after being caught kissing Nathan Cleary's girlfriend. Rather than taking full responsibility, showing genuine remorse, and committing to real consequences, Walsh released a statement so tone-deaf and excuse-laden that it's actually made people angrier than they were before. His reputation has taken a hit that might be impossible to recover from. His relationship with teammates is damaged, possibly beyond repair. And his statement, which was supposed to start the healing process, has instead become another chapter in one of the messiest scandals Australian sport has ever seen. If this was Walsh's attempt at damage control, it's been an absolute catastrophe from start to finish.